The moment froze like a photograph searing itself into James Mitchell's memory. His bride, Emma, stood beside him at the altar, radiant in white lace that had taken months to select. 200 guests filled the pews of St. Mary's Cathedral, the church where 3 generations of Mitchells had married. The afternoon sunlight streamed through stained glass, casting kaleidoscope patterns across the marble floor. Then came the words that shattered everything. "Does anyone have reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony? Speak now, or forever hold your peace." The traditional phrase, one James had insisted on despite Emma calling it outdated, hung in the air for only seconds before a woman's voice cut through the silence. "I do." The collective gasp seemed to suck all oxygen from the cathedral. James turned toward the sound, his body moving before his mind could process what was happening. In the center aisle, halfway to the back, stood a woman he hadn't seen in nearly 6 years. Beside her, clutching her hand, was a boy with familiar eyes. His eyes. "This man," the woman said, her voice surprisingly steady, "is already a father. To my son. Our son." The boy, perhaps 5 years old, looked confused and frightened by the sudden attention of hundreds of strangers. He wore a small blue suit that seemed too formal for his age, his dark hair neatly combed to one side. Emma's hand slipped from James's grasp. He reached for it instinctively, but she pulled away, her eyes never leaving his face, searching for denial that wouldn't come. "James?" Emma whispered, the single word carrying the weight of 1,000 questions. The cathedral erupted in murmurs. James's mother covered her mouth with a handkerchief. His father stood, then sat back down, seemingly unsure what action to take. The priest looked between James and the woman in the aisle, waiting for someone to speak. But James couldn't find his voice. The room tilted slightly, and he gripped the altar to steady himself. Because in that moment, looking at the boy's face, the shape of his jaw, the set of his eyes, he knew. He knew before any DNA test could confirm it. This was his son. And he had never known he existed. James Mitchell had always believed his life followed a predictable trajectory. The son of a federal judge and a university professor, he'd grown up in a home where expectations were clear: excellence in academics, respect for tradition, and above all, integrity. His childhood home in Boston's Beacon Hill neighborhood had been filled with books and serious dinner conversations about law, ethics, and responsibility. At Harvard Law, he'd excelled, just as everyone expected. There he'd met Emma Lawson during his second year. She was brilliant, driven, from a family not unlike his own. Their courtship had been, like everything else in James's life, measured and sensible. They shared ambitions, values, and a vision for the future that aligned perfectly with the lives their parents had built. But 6 years ago, there had been a brief detour from that carefully mapped path. A summer clerkship in Chicago, 3 months away from Boston, from Emma, from the weight of expectations. That summer, he'd met Sophia Chen at a colleague's birthday celebration. She was an artist, spontaneous, vibrant, everything his structured world was not. Their connection had been immediate and intense. For 8 weeks, James had lived a different life. Sophia had shown him parts of himself he hadn't known existed, a capacity for joy, for living in the moment, for seeing beauty in imperfection. They'd stayed up talking until dawn, explored the city at midnight, made love in her paint-splattered apartment while rain tapped against the windows. When August ended, so did their time together. James returned to Boston, to Emma, to the life that had been waiting. He'd called Sophia once after returning east, an awkward conversation that ended with mutual agreement that their summer had been beautiful but temporary. He'd never told Emma about Sophia, not because it had meant nothing, but perhaps because it had meant too much, a glimpse of a different life he hadn't been brave enough to choose. Now, standing at the altar with his past literally walking down the aisle, James remembered Sophia's last words to him on that phone call. "I hope you find what you're looking for, James." Had her voice caught slightly? Had there been something she'd wanted to tell him? As the chaos in the cathedral continued to swell, James caught his father's eye. The disappointment there was palpable. His mother was weeping quietly. Emma's parents had moved to her side, her father's arm protectively around her shoulders. The priest was attempting to usher guests into the vestibule, suggesting a private moment for the family. Family. The word echoed in James's mind as he looked again at the boy. His son had his grandfather's chin, the Mitchell chin. How had he not known? How had no one told him? James, Emma said, her voice stronger now, edged with anger beneath the shock. Do you know this woman? Before he could answer, Sophia spoke again. I didn't come to ruin anything, she said, her voice carrying through the now quieter church. I just thought he should know his son, that his son should know him. She looked down at the boy, who pressed himself against her leg. This is Ethan. Ethan Mitchell Chen. The middle name hit James like a physical blow. She had given the boy his name without ever telling him. We need to talk, James finally managed, his voice hoarse. Not here. Emma stepped back, removing her veil with shaking hands. Yes, she said coldly. Not here. The wedding that had taken a year to plan unraveled in minutes. Guests were directed to the reception venue with confused apologies. Emma disappeared with her parents. James found himself in the church office with Sophia and Ethan, his own parents hovering uncertainly in the doorway. You should have told me, were the first words he said when they were alone. You had no right to keep this from me. Sophia's eyes flashed. I tried, James. I called you 3 times after you left. You never returned my calls. I wrote you a letter that came back unopened. That's impossible, he started, then remembered changing his number after law school, moving apartments twice. The firm's mailroom that routinely discarded personal correspondence without notification. Ethan sat in a chair too big for him, swinging his legs, watching the adults with solemn eyes. Are you really my dad? He asked suddenly, his voice small but clear. The question cut through everything else. James knelt down, meeting his son's eyes, his own eyes, for the first time. I think I am, he said quietly, and I'm very sorry I didn't know about you until today. Ethan considered this. Mom says you help people who are in trouble. I'm a lawyer, James explained. Sometimes I help people in trouble, yes. I'm not in trouble, Ethan said seriously, but Mom says you should know me anyway. From the mouths of children, James thought. The simplicity of it struck him. You should know me anyway. As if it were that simple. As if his entire life hadn't just imploded. I'd like to know you very much, James said, surprised by how true the words felt. The first weeks after the wedding, that wasn't passed in a blur. James moved out of the Beacon Hill brownstone he and Emma had purchased together, taking a furnished apartment downtown. Emma refused to speak to him directly, communicating only through their respective lawyers about the dissolution of their shared assets. The story made its way through Boston legal circles with predictable speed. James took a leave of absence from his firm, unable to face the pitying looks and whispered conversations that stopped when he entered rooms. His mother, after the initial shock, rallied with practical support. This child is a Mitchell, she said firmly. Whatever else has happened, he deserves to know his family. His father remained more reserved, disappointed not by the existence of his grandson, but by what he perceived as James's irresponsibility. You should have been more careful, was all he said when they finally discussed it. The words stung because they were true. 3 weeks after the wedding day, James sat across from Sophia at a quiet cafe near the public garden. Ethan was at his first day of kindergarten. DNA tests had confirmed what was already visually obvious. James was Ethan's father. I want to be part of his life, James said without preamble. I've missed 5 years. I don't want to miss any more. Sophia nodded, That's why I came forward. He's been asking about you more and more." She hesitated. "I should have tried harder to find you. After the first year, I convinced myself it was better this way. That was wrong." "Why now?" James asked. "Why at my wedding?" Sophia looked down at her coffee. "My mother has cancer, stage 4. She's Ethan's only other family since my father died. I started thinking about what would happen to Ethan if something happened to me too." She met his eyes. "I searched for you online, found the wedding announcement. It felt like maybe the last chance before you started another family." "You could have called," James said, unable to keep the edge from his voice. "Would you have believed me? Over the phone? Would you have done a DNA test if I'd just called you up?" She shook her head. "I needed you to see him, to see yourself in him." She was right, and they both knew it. In the weeks since, James had replayed that moment in the church 100 times. The shock, the denial, then the instant of recognition, that bone-deep knowledge that had come from looking into his son's face. "I'm not moving back to Boston," Sophia said firmly. "My life, my work, my mother, they're in Chicago. But we can figure something out. Summers, holidays, regular visits." James nodded, though the thought of seeing his son only occasionally felt like another loss piled onto everything else he'd lost. "I could relocate," he said, surprising himself. "Chicago has law firms." Sophia's expression softened. "Let's not rush anything. Ethan needs stability right now. Small steps." Small steps began that weekend. James met Ethan at the Children's Museum, neutral territory where they could interact without the pressure of forced conversation. He learned his son loved dinosaurs, hated green vegetables, and had inherited not just his eyes, but his methodical nature. Ethan organized the museum's building blocks by color before beginning his construction. "Mom says you didn't know about me because you were busy helping people," Ethan said as they shared lunch in the museum cafeteria. James glanced at Sophia, who sat at a nearby table, giving them space. "That's part of it," he said carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. Not telling me about you was a mistake. Me not knowing about you was a mistake too." "Are you going to be my dad now?" Ethan asked, the question both innocent and profound. "I am your dad," James said. "I always have been, even when I didn't know it. I'm just learning how to be a good one." That night, alone in his temporary apartment, James found himself doing something he hadn't done since childhood. He wept. For the wedding that never happened, for the years lost with his son, for the simple certainty of the life he'd thought he would have. When the tears finally stopped, he felt emptied out, but somehow lighter. The next morning he called a realtor and began looking for a permanent place to live. A place with a second bedroom for when Ethan could visit. A new beginning. 3 months after the wedding day, life had found a new rhythm. James had returned to work at a different firm, one where he wasn't the guy whose secret child showed up at his wedding. He'd rented a comfortable 2-bedroom apartment in Back Bay with a small park nearby. Ethan had visited twice, flying in with Sophia for long weekends that were by turns awkward and wonderful. Then came the call that changed everything again. "James," Sophia's voice was tight with strain. "My mother's taken a turn for the worse. The doctors are saying weeks, not months." "I'm sorry," he said, and meant it. "What can I do?" "I need to focus on her care. The hospice nurses are wonderful, but..." She paused. "Would you be willing to take Ethan for a while? Just until after." James felt a surge of panic mixed with something else. A fierce desire to step up, to be the father he should have been all along. "Of course," he said without hesitation. "When?" "This weekend? I can put him on a flight Friday. The school understands the situation." That Friday, James stood at Logan Airport's arrivals gate, watching passengers stream through. Finally, he spotted Ethan, clutching the hand of a flight attendant who was escorting him. His son carried a dinosaur backpack almost as large as he was, and wore an expression of careful bravery that made James's heart twist. "Hey, buddy." James said, kneeling down. Hi, Ethan replied solemnly. Mom says Grandma is very sick, so I'm staying with you. That's right, I've got your room all ready. The flight attendant smiled as she handed over Ethan's documents. He was a perfect gentleman the whole flight. Read his dinosaur book twice. That night, after dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets and a bath that somehow soaked both the bathroom and James's shirt, they sat on Ethan's bed for story time. James had purchased every recommended book for 5-year-olds he could find. Mom always lets me pick 3, Ethan informed him. 3 it is, James agreed. Halfway through the second book, Ethan interrupted. Is Grandma going to die? James set the book down. The doctors think she might, yes. That's why your mom needs to spend time with her right now. Ethan nodded, processing this. And then I'll go home? Yes, James said, though the word home being somewhere else still felt wrong. But what if Mom gets sick too? Ethan's voice wavered slightly. Who will take care of me? The question hit James like a physical blow. I will, he said firmly. I'm your dad. Taking care of you is my job, no matter what happens. Ethan seemed to consider this. Promise? I promise. James held out his pinky finger, remembering the childhood ritual. Ethan linked his much smaller finger with his father's, sealing the vow. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, James sat in his living room with a legal pad, making lists. Schools in the area, pediatricians, child psychologists who specialized in grief and transition. If the worst happened, he would be ready. He would not fail his son again. 2 weeks stretched into a month. Sophia's mother rallied briefly, then declined again. Ethan started at a local school as a temporary student. James rearranged his work schedule, found a reliable babysitter for late afternoons, and learned through trial and error how to navigate the world of kindergarten playdates and appropriate lunch packing. They developed routines, pancakes shaped like dinosaurs on Sundays, a trip to the park after school on Wednesdays, FaceTime with Sophia every evening before bed. Ethan's room slowly accumulated toys, books, and art projects. James's refrigerator disappeared beneath drawings of dinosaurs, superheroes, and increasingly, pictures of my dad and me. James found himself changing too. Work, once the center of his existence, became something he did between more important moments, helping with kindergarten homework, teaching Ethan to ride a bike in the park, building elaborate blanket forts on rainy weekends. 6 weeks into Ethan's stay, Emma called. They hadn't spoken since the wedding day. I heard you have your son living with you, she said without preamble. Yes, James confirmed, stepping into the hallway so Ethan wouldn't overhear. Temporarily, his grandmother is dying. A pause. I'm sorry to hear that. Thank you. Another pause, longer this time. I'm moving to New York, Emma finally said. I've accepted a position with Hargrove and Bell. Congratulations, that's a good firm. James, her voice softened slightly. I was angry for a long time. I still am sometimes. But I've been thinking about what happened. You didn't know about him, did you? No, James said quietly. I didn't. I would have told you if I had. I believe you. The words seemed to cost her something. I couldn't before, but I do now. After they hung up, James stood in the hallway for a long moment, feeling the weight of what might have been. Then Ethan called from the living room, Dad, come see what I built, and the present pulled him back. That night, Sophia called later than usual. James could tell from her voice that she'd been crying. She's gone, Sophia said simply. Mom passed an hour ago. I'm so sorry, James said, meaning it. What can I do? I need to make arrangements. The funeral, her affairs. She took a shaky breath. Can you keep Ethan a little longer? Just until after the service? Of course. Take whatever time you need. Thank you. A pause. How is he? He's good, missing you but adjusting well. He made friends with the boy next door. They're inseparable. That sounds like Ethan. Her voice warmed slightly. James? I never expected to say this, but you're a good father. The words settled something in him he hadn't realized was unsettled. I'm trying to be. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived from a Chicago law firm. Inside was a formal document naming James as Ethan's guardian in the event of Sophia's death or incapacity, along with a handwritten note, "Just in case, let's talk when I'm back in Boston next week." The funeral was small, just family and close friends. James flew to Chicago with Ethan, staying at a hotel near Sophia's apartment. Watching his son cling to his mother at the graveside, James felt like an intruder in their grief. Yet when Ethan reached for his hand during the service, he also felt, for the first time, truly part of this unexpected family they had formed. After the funeral, while Ethan napped in the hotel room under the babysitter's watch, James and Sophia sat in the hotel restaurant. "I've been offered a position at the Museum of Fine Arts," Sophia said, turning her coffee cup in small circles. "In Boston." James looked up sharply. "Since when?" "They approached me 6 months ago. I turned them down because of Mom." She met his eyes. "I'm reconsidering." "Because of Ethan?" "Because of Ethan," she agreed. "And because there's nothing keeping me in Chicago now." She hesitated. "It would mean changes for you too. Shared custody for real, not just these temporary arrangements." "I want that," James said immediately. "I want Ethan in my life permanently." Sophia nodded. "There's something else we should discuss." She took a deep breath. "That day, at the church, I didn't just come because of my mother's illness. I came because I found out about your engagement through an old mutual friend. It made me realize I'd been unfair, keeping Ethan from you all these years." "You tried to contact me," James reminded her. "At first, yes, but I could have tried harder." She looked down. "The truth is, I was hurt when you went back to your old life so easily, when you never really looked for me afterward. Part of me wanted to punish you by keeping Ethan to myself." The admission hung between them. James wanted to be angry, but found he couldn't summon the emotion. Too much had changed. "We both made mistakes," he said finally. "What matters now is doing right by Ethan." "Agreed." Sophia straightened. "So, co-parents? In the same city?" "Co-parents," James confirmed, the word both strange and right. 2 months later, Sophia and Ethan moved into an apartment 15 minutes from James's place. They established a schedule: weekdays with Sophia, weekends with James, flexible for work commitments and special occasions. Ethan transferred to a permanent school placement, where he thrived. James's parents, after initial hesitation, embraced their role as grandparents with unexpected enthusiasm. His mother took Ethan to museums and libraries. His father taught him chess and took him to Red Sox games. "He has the Mitchell analytical mind," his father declared proudly after Ethan beat him at checkers. Life settled into a new normal that sometimes felt surreal to James. He would catch himself watching Ethan, helping him with homework, teaching him to throw a baseball, tucking him in at night, and wonder at how completely his priorities had shifted. Then came the day that upended everything once more. James was in court when his phone vibrated repeatedly in his pocket. Stepping into the hallway during a recess, he found 6 missed calls from Sophia's number and a text. "Emergency. Call immediately." His heart pounding, he called back. A strange voice answered. "Hello? Who is this?" "Where's Sophia?" James demanded. "Sir, this is Nurse Reyes at Boston Memorial. Are you James Mitchell?" "Yes. What's happened? Where's my son?" "Your son is fine. He's here with a social worker. Ms. Chen was brought in after a car accident. She's in surgery now." The world tilted sideways. "How bad is it?" A pause. "You should come to the hospital, Mr. Mitchell." James arrived at Boston Memorial in record time, having left his assistant to explain his absence to the judge. He found Ethan in the pediatric waiting area, coloring quietly with a young woman who introduced herself as a hospital social worker. "Dad!" Ethan ran to him. "Mom's car got hit by a truck. There was an ambulance and everything." James knelt down, checking his son for injuries. "Are you okay? Were you in the car?" "No, I was at school. Ms. Perez brought me here." Ethan's expression turned anxious. "Is Mom going to be okay?" "The doctors are helping her right now," James said, not wanting to make promises he couldn't keep. "I'm going to talk to them and find out more." The news wasn't good. Sophia had suffered severe internal injuries and head trauma. She was in surgery, her condition critical. "The next 24 hours are crucial," the doctor told James. "You should prepare yourself and your son for the possibility that she might not recover." The words felt like physical blows. James thought of Sophia, vibrant, talented Sophia, lying broken in an operating room. He thought of Ethan losing his mother so soon after his grandmother. He thought of the fragile co-parenting relationship they'd built, now hanging by the thinnest thread. "What do I tell him?" James asked the social worker, nodding toward Ethan, who was back to coloring, though with less enthusiasm. "The truth, but gently," she advised. "Children sense when adults are hiding things, and it can make them more frightened." That night, James brought Ethan home to his apartment. They sat on the couch, Ethan's favorite stuffed dinosaur clutched tightly in his arms. "Mom is very hurt," James explained. "The doctors are working very hard to help her get better." "But she will get better?" Ethan's eyes were wide and frightened. James took a deep breath. "I hope so, buddy. Everyone is doing everything they can, but she's hurt very badly." "Like Grandma was sick badly?" Ethan asked, connecting the dots with the terrible clarity of children. "Yes," James admitted, "like that. But people do recover from accidents. We're going to hope very hard, and we'll go see her as soon as the doctors say it's okay." That night, Ethan insisted on sleeping in James's bed. James lay awake, listening to his son's breathing, thinking of the guardianship papers Sophia had prepared. Had she somehow sensed this coming? Had she known that their carefully constructed, co-parenting arrangement might collapse so suddenly? The next morning brought marginally better news. Sophia had survived the night and was stable, though still unconscious. "She's young and healthy," the neurosurgeon told James. "That's in her favor. But the brain injury is severe. We won't know the full extent until she wakes up, if she wakes up." Days passed. James rearranged his entire life around hospital visits and maintaining normalcy for Ethan. His firm was understanding, allowing him to work remotely when possible. His parents stepped in to help with childcare. Ethan's school counselor met with him regularly. A week after the accident, Sophia opened her eyes. The moment should have been triumphant, but the doctors remained cautious. "She's responsive but not fully conscious," they explained. "There are varying levels of brain activity return after trauma." 2 more weeks passed. Sophia began tracking movement with her eyes. She could squeeze a hand on command, but she didn't speak, didn't seem to recognize visitors, including Ethan, whose visits James carefully managed to be brief and positive. "When is Mom coming home?" Ethan asked one night as James tucked him in. "I don't know," James answered honestly. "The doctors are still helping her. But she will come home someday?" The hope in his son's voice broke something in James. "I don't know that either, buddy. Her brain was hurt in the accident. Sometimes when that happens, people don't get all the way better." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "If she doesn't come home, will I stay with you forever?" "Yes," James said firmly. "You'll stay with me. I promised you that, remember? No matter what happens, I'll take care of you." Ethan nodded, seemingly reassured by this one certainty in a suddenly uncertain world. The next day, James met with Sophia's doctors for a formal assessment. The prognosis was not what he'd hoped to hear. While Sophia was making progress, it was slow and might plateau well short of full recovery. she would likely need long-term care, possibly for the rest of her life. "You're listed as her healthcare proxy," the neurologist said, indicating the paperwork Sophia had filed after her mother's death. "And you have the guardianship arrangement for your son. Have you given thought to long-term plans?" James hadn't. Not really. He'd been living day to day, hoping for a miracle that was looking increasingly unlikely. "What are her options?" he asked. The doctor outlined possibilities: continued hospital care, transfer to a specialized rehabilitation facility, eventually perhaps a skilled nursing home. None of the options sounded like anything Sophia, independent, creative Sophia, would have wanted. That night, after Ethan was asleep, James found himself sitting at his kitchen table with the guardianship papers and Sophia's healthcare directive. She had been clear about not wanting extraordinary measures if there was no hope of meaningful recovery. But what constituted meaningful? The doctors couldn't say for certain how much function she might eventually regain. As her healthcare proxy, the decision ultimately rested with him. The weight of it felt crushing. This woman, who had once meant so much to him, who had given him his son, whose life had become intertwined with his in ways neither of them could have imagined. Her fate was in his hands. The next morning, he received a call from the hospital. Sophia had spoken her first word since the accident. Just one word: Ethan. James rushed to the hospital, hope surging. He found Sophia's doctor tempering expectations. "It's a positive sign, but not necessarily indicative of full cognitive recovery. Many patients with severe brain injuries retain emotional connections even when other functions are compromised." When James entered her room, Sophia's eyes tracked to him. There was something there. Recognition, perhaps, or at least awareness. "Sophia," he said gently. "It's James. Can you hear me?" A slight nod. Progress. "Ethan is fine," he continued. "He's at school. He misses you." "Ethan," she said again, the word slurred but unmistakable. "Yes, Ethan. He's safe. I'm taking care of him, just like we arranged." Something like relief seemed to cross her face. Then, with visible effort, she formed another word: "Good." The moment felt monumental, not just her second word, but her acknowledgement, her blessing of his care for their son. In the weeks that followed, Sophia made slow but steady progress. Single words became short phrases. Physical therapy helped her regain some movement on her right side, though her left remained significantly impaired. Cognitive testing showed deficits in memory and executive function, but her recognition of people, especially Ethan, remained strong. 3 months after the accident, her medical team recommended transfer to a rehabilitation facility specializing in brain injury recovery. The facility they suggested was in western Massachusetts, nearly 2 hours from Boston. "It's the best option for her type of injury," the doctor explained. "But I understand the distance creates complications for family visits." Family. The word still caught James by surprise sometimes. Yes, they were a family, not in the traditional sense, not the family he had once planned with Emma, but a family nonetheless. The decision came to him with unexpected clarity. He called a realtor that afternoon. 2 months later, James, Ethan, and Sophia began a new chapter. James purchased a house halfway between Boston and the rehabilitation facility, a compromise that allowed him to continue his work and Ethan his school, while making regular visits to Sophia manageable. The house had a first-floor bedroom with an accessible bathroom, for the day when Sophia might be able to have home visits or even, eventually, live with them with proper care. Ethan thrived in their new home, making friends in the neighborhood and decorating his room with a combination of dinosaurs and space themes. He visited his mother twice weekly, reading her stories, showing her his schoolwork, filling her in on their lives with the unselfconscious chatter of childhood. Sophia's progress continued, though more slowly than anyone had hoped. She could now speak in complete, if simple, sentences. Her right side had regained much of its function, allowing her to paint again, not with her former skill, but with a new, raw expressiveness that her therapists encouraged. Her left side remained significantly impaired, requiring assistance for many basic tasks. A year after the accident, Sophia's doctors suggested a trial home visit. The house James had purchased was ready, equipped with ramps, grab bars, and other accessibility features. He hired a home health aide to assist during the day while he was at work and Ethan at school. The first home visit lasted a weekend. Ethan was ecstatic, proudly showing his mother every corner of the house he'd helped prepare for her. James watched their interaction with a complex mix of emotions: joy at seeing them together, sorrow for all Sophia had lost, anxiety about whether this arrangement could work long-term. That evening, after Ethan was in bed, Sophia sat in her wheelchair in the living room, looking out at the backyard where James had installed a swing set. "Thank you," she said, her speech still halting but clearer than it had been. "For Ethan. For this." James sat across from her. "You would have done the same." She shook her head slightly. "Not sure. Not like this." She gestured around the house he had created for them. "You're a good man, James. Better than I knew." "I'm just trying to do right by both of you," he said simply. Sophia studied him for a long moment. "You love him so much." "He's my son." "Our son," she corrected gently. "Yes," James agreed. "Our son." The weekend visit extended to a week, then 2. Eventually, with her doctor's approval, Sophia moved in permanently. The arrangement wasn't without challenges. Her care needs were significant, her frustration with her limitations sometimes overwhelming. But there were good days too, when the three of them felt almost like the family they might have been under different circumstances. One evening, as summer turned to fall, James sat on the back porch watching Ethan and Sophia in the yard. Ethan was carefully pushing his mother's wheelchair along the smooth path James had installed, showing her the fairy garden they had built together under the oak tree. Sophia's laugh drifted back to him, still her laugh, despite everything that had changed. His phone rang. Emma's name appeared on the screen, surprising him. They spoke occasionally now, their conversation civil but brief. "James," she said when he answered. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all. How are you?" "I'm good. The New York position is working out well." She paused. "I heard through mutual friends about Sophia's accident, about what you've done, the house, taking care of both of them." "It seemed like the right thing to do," James said simply. "It was. Is." Another pause. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened at our wedding. At the time it felt like the worst day of my life, but now I wonder if it wasn't somehow meant to be." "Meant to be?" James repeated, surprised. "You're exactly where you should be, James, with your son, taking care of his mother. I see that now." Her voice softened. "I'm engaged again. He's a good man, different from you, but right for me. I'm happy for you, Emma. Truly." After they hung up, James remained on the porch, watching his son and Sophia as twilight settled around them. Emma's words echoed in his mind. Exactly where you should be. Was she right? Was this complicated, challenging life somehow what was meant for him all along? Ethan ran up the porch steps, breathless with excitement. "Dad, Mom says we can have ice cream for dessert. She remembers my favorite is chocolate chip." The simple joy in his son's voice, the milestone of Sophia remembering such a detail. These were the moments that answered the question. Yes, this was exactly where he should be. Not the life he had planned, but the life he was meant to live. 5 years later, on a bright June morning, James stood in the back garden of their home. The space had been transformed with flowers, white chairs, and an arch twined with roses. Guests filled the seats, his parents, now visibly older but still vital, colleagues from his firm, Ethan's teachers and friends, Sophia's art therapy group and medical team. Sophia sat in the front row, her wheelchair decorated with flowers for the occasion. At 50, she had defied many of her doctor's more pessimistic predictions. While she would never fully recover from her injuries, she had regained enough function to paint professionally again. Her work now featured in galleries that specialized in artists with disabilities. She lived in the converted garage apartment on their property, independent but close, an arrangement that had evolved naturally as her abilities improved. Ethan, now 11, stood beside James at the arch, handsome in his fursuit, pride evident in his posture as he fulfilled his role as best man. He had grown into a thoughtful, compassionate boy, with James's analytical mind and Sophia's creative spirit. Music began, and the guests turned as Catherine walked down the aisle, radiant in a simple ivory dress. James had met her 2 years earlier at a support group for families of brain injury survivors. A widow whose husband had suffered a stroke, she had understood James's complicated life in ways few others could. Their friendship had grown slowly into something deeper, with Ethan's enthusiastic approval and Sophia's genuine blessing. As Catherine reached him, James felt a sense of completion he had never expected to find again. This was not the wedding he had once planned in St. Mary's Cathedral. This was something different, a celebration not just of new love, but of the family they had all built together through circumstances none of them would have chosen. Later, during the reception, James found a moment alone with Sophia, who was watching Ethan teach Catherine's daughter a complicated handshake they had invented. "Happy?" Sophia asked, her speech still halting but clear. "Yes," James said honestly. "Are you okay with all this?" Sophia smiled, the smile that had once captivated him in Chicago, different now, but still essentially hers. "More than okay. Right." James nodded, understanding what she meant. This arrangement, unconventional, unexpected, had somehow become right for all of them. As the celebration continued around them, James reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From that shocking moment in the church when a woman stood up with a child, to this day of new beginnings. The path had been neither straight nor easy, but it had led to a life richer and more meaningful than he could have imagined. Ethan bounded up, pulling him back to the present moment. "Dad, Catherine says we can get a dog now that we're officially a family. A big one!" James laughed, catching Catherine's eye across the garden as she shrugged apologetically. "We'll discuss it tomorrow," he promised. "That means yes," Ethan declared confidently, running off to share the news. Sophia chuckled. "He knows you too well." "He does," James agreed. Their son, who had once been a stranger, now knew him better than anyone. The boy who had appeared so unexpectedly had become the center around which their unusual family orbited. The child who had disrupted one wedding had now joyfully participated in another. As the evening light softened around them, James looked at the gathering, not one family, but a blending of several, connected by choice as much as circumstance. This was his legacy. Not the perfect life he had once pursued, but the authentic one he had built from unexpected beginnings. It was, he realized with profound gratitude, exactly where he was meant to be.